Okay, we've got pretty decent sized crowd today. We just hit 6 o'clock, so I'm going to get this thing started. This is a town hall in regards to the Unhoused Services Grants Forum. We're going to present in a listening learn session here in regards to the council building a grant for unhoused services. So as mayor, I'm just going to ask you guys to act with decorum, as we all will up here. This is a time for the city to download a lot of information to you guys as the public. There is questions that will be answered. There's pink cards in the back. You can submit those questions up until the end. Hopefully you don't wait till the last minute so we can get them in. Previous notice was given to submit questions online as well as emails, and so we will be going through those. I will remind you, we are currently still underneath a lawsuit with a temporary injunction in regards to this topic at hand. So we will act with decorum up here, and we will try to present as much information as possible to you guys, as well as answer as many questions as we can to you guys. If there is a question that we do feel that might kind of tiptoe in the area that we don't want to address tonight, we will fully state that in regards to the fact that we are still underneath a temporary injunction underneath this lawsuit in regards to the homeless. So with that, I'm going to introduce Aaron Kubik, the town manager, and he will take care of the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and members of the public for being here tonight. Here behind me is the agenda. I just want to start by having us at least have the same framework from a foundation perspective moving forward into this discussion on why we're here today. I'm going to then have Stephanie Nuttall, our city attorney, come up, and she's going to provide you some information with regards to the grant guidelines and deliverables. Then we're going to turn it back over to you for questions and answers. We'll be answering those questions that have been submitted in advance or submitted today. Make sure to fill out the pink card like the mayor was saying, get it to JC or Karen in the back there, and they'll make sure that I get them. And then after questions and answers are done and all of your questions have been asked, we will then turn it over to public comment. So really, to frame why we're all here, a big reason of this is because of House Bill 3115, which was established in 2023. It stated that local governments may regulate resting in public places when it comes to time, place, and manner for camping and sleeping. However, if you are going to regulate, they must be objectively reasonable, and the law requires cities to ensure that their ordinances do not criminalize the mere act of being homeless when no shelter is available. Another reason why we're also here is a current lawsuit with which the mayor mentioned, and I'll go over that in a little bit of detail also. House Bill 3115 really focuses on three main points: car camping, property removal, and time, place, and manner restrictions. I just want to highlight just briefly, so we're all on the same page, time, place, and manner restrictions, which is the bulk of 195, 500 through 530. Really, what ORS 195 states is that you can regulate, cities can regulate sitting, lying, and sleeping, and the ability for people to stay warm and dry in the outdoors on public property for properties that are open to the public. How do we regulate those? Is we regulate those by defining appropriate time, place, and manner regulations for individuals who are unhoused to rest. The standard for that, though, is what the state of Oregon has defined or not defined as objectively reasonable. There is no statutory definition for objectively reasonable, so when cities regulate resting in public spaces, they must do so in an objectively reasonable way, but that was not defined. Cities are supposed to take the totality of circumstances to try to determine what is objectively reasonable for their own community. Again, this regulation of House Bill 3115 provides for time, place, and manner regulations if cities determine they want to regulate resting in public spaces. It's not a requirement. Cities do not have to implement time, place, and manner regulations if they don't regulate resting in public spaces, which means individuals will be able to rest on any public space open to the public. So besides House Bill 3115, We also are currently operating under a preliminary injunction and temporary restraining order. So the reason we're under a temporary restraining order right now is it was determined that some actions that we did, that the city did, were objectively not reasonable based on the Disability Rights of Oregon's court case. The city reduced our resting sites, and that was one of the claims, is that we can't reduce our resting sites. They also claimed that some of our sites were not ADA accessible. And at one time, we did have 1 week resting opportunities, and we reduced those to overnight. And their argument was that that is also unreasonable, as particularly relates to ADA compliance. So, what the injunction that we're operating under right now is that we can enforce our codes when it comes to time, place, and manner regulations in the following areas: on sidewalks, streets, alleyways, pedestrian entrances, vehicle entrances, Riverside Park, and Reinhardt Volunteer Park. We must also establish resting sites of up to 150 capacity, and we need to allow for individuals to rest 96 hours. That's what came from the court case that we're currently working under in the injunction. Recognizing that those things needed to be in place in order for us to remove the injunction, the City of Grants Pass and the City Council immediately went to work to change our codes, to open up additional sites, to comply with the court ruling, and we've done so. We immediately changed those codes. We opened up some sites, which you can see across the street here, which does provide a capacity of up to 150 people to rest. We also allow those individuals to rest up to 96 hours. Now that we're in compliance, we can go back to the courts to try to get the injunction removed and the court case dismissed. There's 2 main ways we can do that. One, we can file that with the court system, and it could take up to 6 months to get a ruling from that. Recognizing that that's a relatively lengthy process, the other way is for us to try to negotiate a settlement with the Disability Rights of Oregon. This is the way that council and staff is moving. This is an opportunity for us to potentially reduce and eliminate the injunction and the court case within weeks instead of months. We're in the process right now of negotiating a settlement with Disability Rights of Oregon. In the meantime, Disability Rights of Oregon recognized that the City Council did take affirmative action to comply with the court. In doing so, they granted us the opportunity to take and enforce 7 additional parks to the list, the gray list that I have on the slide, which was this original injunction. Disability Rights of Oregon stated that we can have 7 more additional sites during the settlement negotiations, and so the parks listed in blue are the new additional parks that have been added that we can enforce our time, place, and manner regulations. What do we know moving forward as we're developing new ways to comply with Senate Bill 3115? Is we know that we can prohibit resting on sidewalks, roads, entrances. We know that we can prohibit resting in parks. We know that designated resting areas must be ADA accessible. We need to make sure that if we're going to identify resting sites, they need to be ADA compliant. Limiting resting to only nighttime hours is not permissible. We're going to have to allow for longer than nighttime resting. For the City of Grants Pass in our community, the court has determined that what's objectively reasonable is a minimum of 150 resting sites. So when we're looking at solutions, say for instance this grant program that we're looking at, one of the things we have to try to work with is make sure that the solutions we come up with meet those minimum standards. Designated resting locations need to be within our urban growth boundary. Now that encompasses the city limits also. So we have the urban growth boundary and we have the city limits. Our resting sites that we designate need to be within the urban growth boundary. We can require regular relocation, so after they've rested for 96 hours, there is an opportunity where we can have them move to another approved resting site, and we do have multiple resting sites for that. And the other caveat that we do know also is once we offer up something of a service, we pretty much can't remove it, and it would be very difficult to go backwards. So whatever services we provide are services that we'll need to make sure we own into the future. From a big picture perspective, now that we know those kind of things, Council really had 3 different options when it came to trying to comply with House Bill 3115. The first option is to do nothing, to not implement anything when it comes to House Bill 3115, and that means no regulation. What that is the city does not regulate resting in public spaces at all. That means individuals can rest on any piece of public property that's open to the public. We would just be able to enforce conduct issues. The two other types of time, place, and manner regulations that we looked at is positive location designation and negative location designation. So currently right now, we have in place what's called positive location designation. We have identified in a positive sense, this is where you can go and rest. That's why it's called positive. Versus negative is these are the areas you can't go, and then we don't define the other areas where they can rest. So that's the difference between positive and negative. We are currently working under the positive form of time, place, and manner, which says, here's where you can go and rest. Just to break that down from a concept of why positive versus negative or no regulation was chosen, from a positive location designation, there's some pros and cons. Some of the things that, from a positive of where we are right now, is it does offer clear direction and predictability to individuals experiencing homelessness. They know where they can go to rest. There's no question. Here's the locations. It's easier for enforcement. The city can guide people to designated locations. If we find someone that needs a place to rest, it's easy for our public safety department and staff and the community to say, here's where you can go. May reduce complaints from the public and businesses if the problem behaviors are concentrated in managed areas, and those areas are chosen that are most comparable with regards to zoning requirements. There is a potential to co-locate with services. When you have positive locations chosen, you can work with service providers to maybe come up with navigation type centers to where multiple services are being provided at one or a few sites. Creates an opportunity for a safer and more sanitary environment, and it does demonstrate proactive engagement with homeless while complying with legal mandates. Those are some of the positives of the type of program that we've chosen. Some of the negatives or cons that need to be considered is, by some, it may be perceived as hurting the unhoused into specific zones, raising concerns about segregation or inequity. It does require investment in infrastructure services and ongoing management of designated spaces. When you designate a space as positive, therefore you have some ownership there. You have to start looking at what other services need to be provided. For instance, porta potties or waste management services. So in the negative sense, those services aren't necessarily needed because you're not telling them where to go. But when you're telling them in a positive sense where they can go to rest, you have some responsibility. It could lead to overcrowding or unsanitary conditions if space is limited or not well managed. And there is risk of legal challenges if the number of designated spots is insufficient relative to the need. From a negative location designation standpoint, some of the pros to consider were to offer flexibility and broad compliance with legal requirements so long as enough space is available elsewhere. It targets specific areas of public concern like downtowns or near schools, minimizing impacts on businesses and families. So you are saying these are areas you can't go. So you're taking your most sensitive areas, maybe around schools, maybe your central business district or other locations. You're saying these areas are not allowed to rest, but then they are allowed to rest in those areas that you have not defined. There are some lower operational costs than managing a designated site because you don't have that responsibility of saying, if you have to go here, then we have to provide some services. And it maintains public space access in high use or sensitive areas for all users. Some of the cons of a negative location approach is it is harder for unhoused individuals to know exactly where they're allowed to go. Rules may feel arbitrary or unclear. If you say you can't go here, but you don't give an option of where they can go rest, it is a little unclear. Enforcement can be complicated, particularly if the allowed areas are not clearly defined. It may result in the dispersal of encampments into neighborhoods or less visible areas like greenways and creeks. And it can create a perception of displacement rather than a solution. And then not regulating it at all, there is potential for reduced enforcement costs or legal risk for regulating behavior protected under federal and state law. It avoids dispersal issues that will require increased resources. It may increase visibility of the issue, creating urgency and pressure to invest in systemic solutions like housing, shelter, and services. Some of the cons: public infrastructure, public frustration over unmanaged encampments, or visibility of homeless may increase because they can rest anywhere on public property open to the public. Potential degradation of public spaces and services, negative impacts on tourism, businesses, and community perception, reduces the city's ability to mitigate impacts around sensitive areas because they can rest anywhere on public spaces, and it may be seen as a passive or neglectful leadership action. So really, when you look at the considerations when we're trying to comply with Senate Bill 3115, we have to look at the legal perspective. Whether you choose positive, or negative, or not regulating at all, designations must comply with federal and state laws, ensuring that individuals have somewhere to go if they are prohibited from resting in certain areas. From a practical perspective, staff enforcement, public communication, and site management differ greatly depending on the approach, whether you choose positive or you choose negative. And from community values, each option reflects a different philosophy about public space, individual dignity, and government responsibility. Hope that provides you a little background on why we're here today from a standpoint of some of the decisions we're making to try to come up with some solutions in how we're going to be managing time, place, and manner regulations. With that, I'd like to bring forward Stephanie, and she's going to talk to you about an option council's considering, and that is our grant program. Stephanie.
Thank you. Good evening. So with that framework that Aaron just described, I will, back one, talk about some of the options that council has looked at so far. You've probably heard in various places some of these brought up as options. And so we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of those specific options that we've looked at. Those are maintaining the status quo, which is the resting sites that we currently have right across the street and next to the police station. We could close the sites and deregulate. That would be that no regulation option that Aaron just talked about. We could purchase a property or provide a property owned by the city and have that used by an entity to provide space and services. We could simply provide funding for a single entity without competition to be able to do that, or we could offer a competitive grant program to see what services could be provided and what kind of capacity could be provided by those in the community. So some of the things that we looked at, and from the legal perspective, the big one for me was the city's risk and liability. So if we maintain status quo, if we close sites and deregulate, or if we just offer property to a single entity, the risks are higher for the city from a legal perspective. There's still some risk if we just offer grants to a single entity without competition, but if we do a grant program, our risks are reduced. One of the things that came up with in discussing some of those options was, how do we ensure services? Can we ensure services if we do this? If we maintain status quo or close sites and deregulate, no, we have no ability from the city's perspective to make sure that these things are happening. The other options, we would have some, because it would be part of our grant agreement, it would be part of our contracts, things like that, where we could make some requirements of what has to be provided to persons experiencing homelessness. There was some concern about whether or not entities would be treated equally under these various options. If we maintain status quo or close sites and deregulate, yes, because we're not really treating anybody in any way, but not really if we offer a property or a grant to a single entity. If we offer a competitive grant program, it would treat everybody equally. Everyone would be able to apply. There was a question about whether or not the decision-making would be transparent. With status quo, closing sites and deregulating, yes, because there really wouldn't be a lot of decision-making. If we just offered property to a single entity, probably less so, if not no. The reason for that is that negotiations regarding property is an executive session topic. So a lot of those discussions are happening behind closed doors. There would be some if there was a grant to a single entity without competition, but there would be a lot of more with a competitive grant program. And finally, does the solution allow for options that the city hasn't thought of? Is the city really in the best position to understand the nature of the issue and how to best address it? Or are there others in the community that should be able to do that? Most of the answers to that is no, but with a competitive grant program, things that the city hasn't thought of could be brought up as part of the grant solution. So with all of that, that led us to developing a competitive grant program to try to see what we might be able to get for our community. So brief overview, there is no amount for a grant set yet. That is up for discussion by the council. So I believe we're going to be talking about it at next week's workshop on Monday again. As of right now, the recommended fiscal year 2026 budget allocates $371,000 for a 12-month period to maintain the existing sites. That's the porta potties, the fencing, the sanitary, all of that, just to maintain those sites. So that just gives you kind of a framework for considering what kind of numbers we might be looking at. If that's the one-year cost, not including staff time, not including any collateral costs that the city is experiencing, how much would be reasonable then to offer for a grant program? And the purpose would be to find one or more entities that can alleviate the city's obligation to provide capacity for 150 individuals in a manner that is compliant with ADA requirements and other federal, state, and local laws. That's the burden that's on the city that we would like to have somebody better equipped take off of the city, and we would like to help them do that. One of the questions that's come up is low barrier, because essentially what we're looking for is low barrier options. The city doesn't have enough of those. The minimum to enter or stay, and these are common characteristics, it's not really a set definition. The state of Oregon does not have a definition yet. There's some legislation that if passed would require rulemaking that would require a definition to be created, but we don't have one yet. It would be a 24/7 managed site providing sanitation and safety that does not require criminal background checks, credit checks, income verification, program participation, sobriety, or identification to enter or stay. The ideal, from as most people that I've heard from, in addition to that minimum, we would want to be able to accommodate couples and or pets and provide assistance for individuals to move to transitional or permanent housing, participate in addiction recovery, mental health services, employment services, all of the things that can hopefully help get them out of their homeless status. At a minimum, though, we need those beds and we need the space for them to be provided. The current draft of the grant program, and just so everyone's clear, nothing has been decided. There's no guarantee that this is the route we are taking. It's just the option that's currently under consideration. And right now, we would be, the way it's written would have eligible applicants as nonprofit organizations, community organizations, businesses, individuals, or other non-governmental entities as eligible applicants. Governmental entities could be a partner or collaborator, but not the primary applicant. The location for services would have to be within the Grants Pass urban growth boundary. And higher risk applicants may have additional conditions or be disqualified. And those are, there would have to be a risk assessment, a lot of like internal controls for financials, and we'll go over that a little bit here in just a minute. But we just want to make sure that we can attach conditions if we need to make sure that somebody's doing what they're supposed to. The current description of allowed and unallowed costs, we would be looking to provide funding for capital expenses. And that would be the acquisition, upgrade, and or immediate maintenance of physical assets, such as real property, buildings, infrastructure, technology, and or equipment. Not looking to provide funding for operations or goods and services at this point. That should come from other funding sources. And that would be things like personnel wages, benefits, food and beverage, direct services, support, research, marketing, outreach, engagement, and prevention. We will help build the infrastructure, and they would provide the services going forward. The framework for the application would require a cover sheet with a brief summary, just so we kind of have an idea of what we're going to look at. a narrative that would address the purpose of the grant, including the need for the project, the activities and operations or how things will work, what output we can expect, and how that's going to impact the Grants Pass community. There would need to be a budget and budget narrative telling us how much money is needed and why it supports the purpose of the grant. A memorandum of understanding to identify partners, collaborators, and those partner and collaborator roles and responsibilities, and a letter of experience to demonstrate some level of experience in provision of shelter or services. Finally, there would be a risk evaluation providing that organization information about internal controls, financial stability, and if they have any prior performance relating to grants. The goal would be for successful applicants to demonstrate an understanding of the issue in the city of Grants Pass, because Grants Pass is different from other cities. We want to make sure that whoever's applying knows this community. How is that project going to alleviate the city's current situation? And do you have a viable plan long-term that's not going to rely on city funding going forward? How will data be collected to demonstrate effectiveness? How will they work with the surrounding community to minimize adverse impacts? We all know that wherever anything gets placed, the community around that's going to be impacted. So how do we work together to make sure that that's as minimal as possible? And then why the funding is requested is going to enable effective provision of services and a reduction of homelessness in Grants Pass. So those are the things that we're looking for an applicant to demonstrate. The selection would have applications reviewed and scored by a committee, with the highest scoring one or more applications to be presented to council. They will be given a draft grant agreement that's individualized to the particular project, because no project's going to be the same. This is a broad enough concept that we're not saying we want you to do X, Y, Z, and so we can write a single contract up front. It's going to be more particularized. And the applicant's going to have the opportunity to either agree to it or request modifications, and we can negotiate a little bit. Council will then determine whether to award any grant funding and in what amount, and they may modify the amount requested, so they may go higher or lower at their discretion. Some of the requirements in the agreement would be regular reporting, and again, that would kind of depend on what the project is going to do, but we want them to demonstrate that it is making progress and it is being successful. Has to meet timelines, maintain required services during the agreement period, and some of the possible non-compliance consequences are if we haven't provided the funds yet, they don't get their funds, which is very typical for a grant. But we're also going to build in clawback provisions. So basically it turns a grant into a loan if certain things are not met, and then it's payable. And if there's capital acquired during the agreement period, there would be some city rights or interest in that property, so the city would have some recourse there as well. Those are some of the things that, depending on the project, may be considered for a grant agreement. If this moves forward, the tentative timeline, and again, nothing is set in stone at this point, we would have a grant opportunity issued within the next, 10 days out, 9 days out? The application deadline would be July 18th, and the reason for that just has to do with timing on council meetings and when packets need to be put together, making sure we have ample time for a potential applicant to review the agreement, things like that. July 22nd and July 28th is when the grant agreements would go out and the applicant would be able to respond about the draft agreement. The recommendation would be presented to council on August 4th with an intent to award on August 6th. So we'd present it at a council workshop so we could have discussion about it. And then if they wanted to move forward with that, then at that council meeting on the 6th is when there would be action. There would be a 7-day protest period, and then later that week we would execute the agreement. At this point, we're talking about a 6-month window within which we would need to have it fully operational. I can assume that we would probably give some bonus points if someone can get it done a lot faster, because the sooner the better. But the 6-month period would be more of a hard deadline. So we're looking for the sooner the better on this. So with that, turn it over back to Aaron for questions and answers.
Thank you, Stephanie. And if we didn't introduce her before, that is our town attorney representing us on most everything. So now we're going to go through the questions that have been submitted up to this point, and it will be open a little bit if something comes to mind, and then during this, and you want to submit another card, please do in a timely manner. And as soon as we get through this question and answer period, we will have an open comment section later. So please hold your applause and everything at this moment in time. We're just trying to get some information out to you guys and get some questions answered. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Aaron.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And yeah, we've got some questions that have been pre-submitted. We're going to go through those, plus the ones that you're submitting tonight. And a lot of these questions will be answered through Stephanie Null, our city attorney, or we also have Chief Hensman here also with our police department, and or myself will be able to answer some of these technical questions. And there may be some policy questions that ultimately will be council's purview at a future business meeting. So the first question that's at hand is, what assurances does the community have from the city council and mayor that any shelter site won't become a large homeless industrial complex or expand into a 500 to 600 person facility? So that's the first question. And I guess the answer to the potential answer to that is ultimately council is looking at doing a grant program. And depending on what kind of criteria they put into the grant program, it may have limitations on property, it may not have limitations on property, but that is something that council can discuss if that is a concern of the community. One of the things that we'd recommend is that you voice that during your public comment period. But there is not currently any parameters inside the draft grant that council will be looking at that has something related to size of facility. Anything to add to that, Stephanie?
Only that the only way that council could control over that is if council was actively involved in creating it. So there could be a 500 to 600 person facility that if council doesn't provide a grant funding or anything, somebody could just come into our community and put that out there. So we don't always have the control over whether or not that happens, but we can potentially put some parameters over the option council chooses to take that might make those limitations.
So the next question is maybe a question for Stephanie. Will it be required in order to qualify for the grant that they provide drug treatment for the addicted?
That's up to council. If they offer the grant opportunity, they get to decide what the criteria are going to be. The program was designed to address alleviating the city's obligations to provide that 150 individual capacity, so it's not required at this point, but proposals that provide such services would likely be given higher scores in the scoring, so they could address it that way and give priority and preference to those providing services. But the goal of the program, at this point at least, was just to provide that capacity.
Thank you. Next question. Why can't all homeless be bused to Valley of the Rogue State Park? I'm not going to take that one at all. Is that a city attorney question?
Unless they want to go, it would not be legal to remove people from the city.
Thank you. So next question. Can the grant be amended to require the recipients to start monitoring or managing the existing camp during the 6-month implementation window to reduce the impact to the current neighborhood and ensure a more seamless transition to the future site? That's a good question. Someone was trying to recognize the timeline that Stephanie had up there on the screen. I think the answer to that would be, can it? Council could potentially do that, but the one caveat is that you may recall from my presentation, I mentioned if you start a service, you own the service. So this would be considered starting a service. So if in the event the city required that 6-month window to have the site start to be managed by the group that was awarded the contract, the grant, then if something went wrong, and that didn't go through, the city would then likely have to continue those services that were started in the interim. Next question. If once a nonprofit is selected and a shelter is established, can and will the city can the city's run homeless camps be shut down? So the question, if we get something going and it gets implemented, can the city then look at shutting down our current sites?
That is the expectation. I won't say 100% yes, because as soon as I do, something's going to happen to make that not an accurate statement. But the goal is to have the city support something that will lead to the ability to close the existing resting sites.
Okay. Thank you. So the next question, why isn't the city able to utilize the time, place, and manner restrictions for the non-disabled homeless population? No tent or shelter should be allowed to stay erected between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. This is probably, we have guidance from the state of Oregon and through other municipalities that have been challenged that whether you're disabled or not, it's been sort of determined objectively unreasonable if you don't allow more than, if you only allow 7 to 7, say for instance resting. But having additional resting for whatever class you are is something that is likely going to have to happen in the future. Next question, why was Baker Park not closed to overnight camping? I'll take that one because it's part of the presentation. So if you may recall in the presentation, I had a list of blue parks that were added to areas that we can now enforce our time, place, and manner regulations. We were allowed in the during the negotiation process to choose 7 more parks, and the 7 parks that were listed were mainly neighborhood parks surrounded by residential zones that had children's playground equipment and ball fields that were associated with that. And unfortunately, Baker Park was not on that list. And that, I'm now looking for more questions, hungry for questions. Thank you, JC. So the first question, are counselors allowed to protest those that are seeking the grant? I'm not sure if I understand. Are counselors allowed to protest those that are seeking the grant? I'm not quite sure that question. That's more of a, from a legal perspective, council is an elected official, they can, I'm not sure.
I mean, the council will be making the final decision on awarding of any grant, so any issues that a council member could have with someone being offered a potential grant agreement, they could voice that in a public meeting.
The grant program that is in draft form at this moment in time that is being discussed does have criteria for the application. There is a scoring system, and Stephanie, you can correct me if I say anything wrong here. There's a scoring system that will award points for different criteria within that application process. So they will be ranked, but it is up to the council for the ultimate decision. I believe as a governing body, we will do the best that we can to award a grant that meets the criteria that's written within that grant.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question, under the law, and I believe they're probably talking about House Bill 3115, it is the municipality's responsibility to provide services. The city will always have liability. How can it be said it doesn't? So the House Bill 3115 does not require municipalities to provide services. House Bill 3115, if you regulate resting in public spaces, you must do so in an objectively reasonable way, but it does not mandate that you have to have certain services. Next question. Can the city require any and all individuals register to stay at overnight shelter? So can we require them to register in order to stay?
Short answer is no. That would be considered not a low barrier option. If you note from my description, the slide that was up there, one of the key components of a low barrier option is not requiring identification.
Thank you, Stephanie. Will there be any considerations for buffers like schools, daycares, and/or elderly facilities? And I'm anticipating that's with regards to the grant program and where acceptable locations might be.
Locations would still have to comply with all zoning regulations, so wherever it would be allowed under our zoning law is what would be there. And I believe there are some buffer requirements that come with that.
Question, could the grant option costs be less than what is now being allocated of $371,000? Is the $371,000 an annual amount? So council ultimately will determine the value of the grant and when they're looking at that. And that's a discussion that they're going to be having in the future. I think the upcoming workshop next Monday is an opportunity for them to discuss the findings from this group and the modifications that Stephanie, our city attorney, has done for them to take a look at the grant before we move forward. The $371,000 is an annual budgeted amount. How often would the grant be renewed? And would progress reports be due?
Yes, progress reports would be required. That would be part of the grant agreement, the reporting requirements. And as of right now, it is not set up to be renewable. It's set up to be a one-time capital expense upfront, not a renewable.
Okay. Question, is the present resting sites permanent? So I'm guessing we've got really two locations, 6th and A here across the street, and then one on 7th by the police station. These are temporary in nature. Council has been very clear from the very, very beginning that these resting sites are temporary in nature until such time as we find another solution to our managing of our 3115 regulations. And the grant program is one of those ways that we're exploring right now. Grants Pass has many empty businesses. Homeless resting sites is contributing to it. Can't a more out of sight be chosen? So I'm anticipating this is likely from the locations that were chosen here. One of the things we were trying to do and do so quickly was we were sued. We had to come around with a quick turnaround time, one of the reasons, to come up with additional resting sites that we can take a look at. So one of the options council considered were those that were under our control, city-owned pieces of property. That was the first easy go-to. It sometimes takes weeks, months, a long time to try to negotiate and acquire any kind of agreement for another piece of property that's not publicly owned. So that was one of the considerations when looking at these sites and where they are located. Are you still considering a homeless camp on Northwest Vine Street? So I guess with this program, if council moves forward with the grant program, the good thing that is great about this, that Stephanie highlighted as her first slide when she came in for the presentation, is this provides it open to any and all people to apply. We are looking for, the city council, the city, is looking for individuals that have the expertise of managing and working with the unhoused to help come up with a solution. We're trying to provide a one-time capital expense to make that happen. I know I'm not an expert, and I don't think any council member up there would say that they're an expert on unhoused and how to manage unhoused services. We're hoping that providing these dollars will incentivize those nonprofits to step forward and say, we have the solution, we were missing this piece, you're providing this piece with that partnership, we will be able to move forward. It will be up to those service providers with their expertise on what they need from a property perspective to come to us with those solutions to utilize the capital that we have provided in the grant program if they move forward with the grant program. So it would not be the city necessarily choosing the site. It would be the service providers that are applying for the grant would be providing the suggested site on where they would like to utilize the capital dollars. Okay, that concludes my questions. Are there any other questions from back there? I'm gonna pause for 10 seconds or so. If anyone has any other questions they'd like to submit, go ahead and write one down now and get it back there. And I'm not seeing pens moving very quickly. So I think there is maybe a small appetite now for us. Oh, there's one more question. So this question might be a little premature. Would Vine Street meet the requirements? I mean, we really haven't looked into this. We don't know. It's not the property that meets the requirements. It's really the nonprofit and the service provider that's going to meet the requirements. The property is just one aspect of it. So you can't just take one aspect of it and say, oh yes, it meets the requirements. It is a package deal, and council would have to take that into consideration. Because the ranking criteria that council went over with Stephanie was very comprehensive, and it's not just about one piece. There's multiple things that ultimately these grants will be judged on and scored and awarded points. So, not seeing any other questions come up, I think this is an opportunity that I might be able to tap out from this aspect of it, and it's now, I'm going to turn this over to the mayor, and the mayor is going to go ahead and facilitate the public portion. As normal with the public meetings, please speak in the microphone. The microphone is on. You don't have to push any buttons. There's going to be a light that comes on. The green light means you got 2 minutes. Yellow light means you got 30 seconds. Red light, please stop, and everyone will be provided the 2 minutes. And if there is a lot of people here in the room to help with an efficiency perspective, you can go ahead and start to sort of line up there in the middle so we can move through the people individually quickly. With that, Mayor, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Stephanie, for all your insight in that. As we just presented, council has tried to entertain. We've been going round and round about how to address this and how to get us out from underneath this injunction and current lawsuit as quickly and as efficiently as possible. This is an opportunity to utilize the area within the nonprofits within the area and their expertise, because as Aaron said, I don't think there's a single council member here that has the idea on the best fix on this. So we want to rely on our partners in the community that deal with this on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully we've presented enough information to you so you get a grasp on what we're trying to accomplish with writing this grant. And hopefully you got some answers to some of your questions. At this moment in time, we're going to have a public comment session. So as was stated before, please come up to the microphone. You have 2 minutes. There's a yellow light and a red light. Please act with decorum. We're all adults here. We want to hear your voice. And we know that this topic is very sensitive, so give everybody the respect they deserve and when they come up to the microphone. And with that, we'll start it out. First person, come on up. Protocol will be state your name and go forth.
My name is Jeremy Ford. I represent Utah for Christ and Pathways to Stability. The Vine Street property has been secured. We signed an earnest money agreement and an intent to lease with the owner the other day. In my hand right now is a draft proposal for the grant based on the draft proposal of the grant. I've worked all weekend on it. Once you guys finalize your draft agreement, we will finalize ours. I've met with UCAN. UCAN has said that they will provide funding according to HB 3644 for lease and other things that we need. The only thing that I need from the city is some infrastructure dollars to get this done. We've got collaboration from a lot of the nonprofits. We've got people ready to work. We're shovel ready right now, ready to go. I think that we've taken a lot off the back of the city, so I just need a little bit more help from the city to get this done so we can bring some healing to the city. The temperatures are rising, the numbers are increasing, and I think the best thing we can do is to move forward quickly and fastly. If the grant is the way we need to go, then we will have that done immediately. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up. Again, state your name and go ahead. Thank you.
My name is Randy Holbrook, and I certainly want to compliment you on the thorough job you're doing. And with all respect to the gentleman that just spoke, we have a duty to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And who are they? The elderly and the children. And in that area, right next door to that proposed Vine Street, is a 55-plus community. Those people are vulnerable. Cat-a-corner, less than 500 feet, is a school, pre-K through 8th. They are vulnerable. And I think it would be a little bit, I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but that's a vulnerable community right there, and I think it would be a hair on the callous side to put it there. And it would endanger those people. And not only that, but there's not a lot of facilities there, such as grocery stores. There's a lot of areas where they can tunnel. You have Gilbert Creek. You've got wide open fence lines going directly to the school, directly through this 55-plus community. And I don't think we should subject them to that. There must be better places. Lastly, I don't think it's a good look. I-5, traffic north and south, seeing that. And then it's not a good look to your community that you would put something like that so close to the most vulnerable. And again, I don't want to disrespect the homeless. There's a lot of good homeless people, but you're not regulating drugs, taking identification, and you're splashing this right into a vulnerable community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Again, restate your name and go ahead. Thank you.
Excuse me, Margie Wilkie. I just want to say that I want to applaud everybody for really working hard on finding a solution. I've went to the meetings, and I've worked with nonprofits before. I've been part of grant writing, and under that grant, those things, I think the grant is the way to go, because it shows transparency. It gives you the opportunity to get out from under it without being liable. It puts other people in charge, but also gives them the requirements and things that they have to do. Accountability is the word I'm looking for. So I think this is really the best way for our community to move forward and get these unfortunate individuals off of your main street. I can't speak to the location that is up right now. Maybe there are better, but I think there's always going to be somewhere that nobody wants them there. Is there ever an ideal place? Probably not by a school. But anyway, I just want to say that I applaud you guys. I hope that we can come together as a community. This is a very giving community. I've seen nonprofits do amazing things in this community. I came here homeless, and I'm now a property owner. So I know this can be done, but it does take cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Again, please restate your name and go for it.
Philip King. We own property across the street, and I assume that the parking here that used to be for you folks is now our tenants' parking, and so now they're complaining that they have no place to park. And it's just, this whole issue has kind of hijacked our town, and I'm just wondering how long are we going to have to put up with them right here? And is there any way that we could maybe provide our tenants with a parking permit so they can park on the street and not have to move every 3 hours? Thank you.
Thank you for your time. We got a little bit of line foreman in the back. You guys want to come up next?
I was going to go last, but at least me at this time. Good evening. My name is Donna Wall, and I'm the director of Dove Ministries. For years, we've walked alongside our homeless neighbors, seeing the profound struggles they face. Dove Ministries offers trauma-informed substance abuse counseling, peer support, critical resources, and prayer ministry, empowering individuals to reclaim their lives. Our house provides a vital faith-based emergency shelter, a sanctuary for women seeking refuge, and a path back to dignity. We recognize the unacceptable reality of the growing numbers of the unmanaged encampments in our city. These sites present the serious concerns for public health, safety, and well-being. Glad you guys are addressing this. Really, I am. My focus is on the extreme vulnerability of homeless women in these settings. They endure daily exposure to violence, exploitation, harm, lacking the basic privacy and dignity for human well-being. We propose a step forward, a managed women's-only campsite or shelter. This would be a safe, secure, and truly supportive environment tailored to the unique needs of homeless women right here in Grants Pass. The site would immediately reduce the risk of violence and exploitation, act as a direct link to essential services, hygiene, mental health support, and substance abuse treatment, with crucial pathways to stability, housing, and employment. Restore a measure of dignity and privacy that the unmanaged camps deny. While we all strive for permanent housing solutions, the initiative offers an immediate, compassionate, and organized approach to alleviating suffering now. We are confident this project will significantly improve the lives of our most vulnerable women and lead to a more effective, humane response to homelessness in our city. Dove Ministries is prepared to collaborate with community partners. We urge this council to prioritize the urgent need for women-specific managed camping sites as a fundamental part of our strategy for Grants Pass. Thank you. And we are not going to be applying for the city grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up. Excuse me.
Good evening. I'm Julie Thomas, county resident. Tonight I'm speaking on behalf as a steering committee member of Pathways to Stability. As many of you know, many organizations, entities, and individuals have worked really hard for the last few years trying to make the greatest impact on our homelessness. And despite that, we still have some huge gaps. But I believe that with this grant opportunity, it might just help us fill the remaining gaps that we've been able to undo on our own. By awarding this grant, we'll provide you as a city an opportunity to show in a tangible way your support for the great work that's already being done and your commitment to being part of the solution, which is where we want to be. I know there are a few people that don't want a single government dollar to be spent, but imagine this. If your tax dollar was spent and it created an environment for local collaboration with our community and our local nonprofits and our churches and others to make sustainable change and bring us to a happy, healthy, safe community again, it would be worth every penny, I think. I believe Pathways to Stability, if awarded this grant and happy to compete, is prepared to develop the Stepping Stone Stabilization Center that can help bridge our gaps. This facility will be 24/7 managed. We'll provide emergency shelter, showers, restrooms, laundry, meals, and wraparound services, including case management, addiction recovery, medical and mental health service, employment readiness, and a full continuum of care to meet the diverse needs of our people. With a safe place to stay and opportunities to work with case managers to develop individualized plans, we can help get people off the streets, out of the encampments, out of our parks. And I believe the center is the answer that we need, and this grant may help us to go to the next level. So thank you for considering being a part of the solution.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Alex Hyde from Grants Pass, and I'm speaking on behalf of a friend named Sammy who couldn't make it tonight. On January 7th, this council made decisions that set our city back, closing the J Street campsite and limiting times at the 7th Street location. On top of that, you revoked the Mint grant. These actions not only dismantled options, but directly led to another lawsuit and a fresh injunction, costing us time, credibility, and momentum. Denying this reality doesn't change the facts. We are now sadly 6 months behind where we could have been. I've watched some of you repeatedly blame House Bill 3115, claiming it's holding Grants Pass hostage. That's simply not true. The law didn't create this problem, ignoring the law did. Other cities across Oregon have followed the law, expanded shelter, which which allowed them to legally implement time, place, and manner restrictions. Grants Pass chose to disregard state law and implement options that were obviously not objectionably reasonable, and now we're still suffering the consequences of those actions. House Bill 3115 is still state law and likely will be for the foreseeable future. The question isn't whether we like it, it's whether we'll comply. Blaming the law or scapegoating unhoused people won't get us out of lawsuits or clean up our city or parks. That said, I am hopeful about the proposed competitive grant program. If done right, it could help us build shelter capacity, restore our parks, and help the city to regain full lawful enforcement authority while treating all residents with dignity and respect. But we can't afford another mistake. This council must stop deflecting and start leading with facts, with knowledge, and with a commitment to legal compliance. Thank you, Sammy Nolan and Alex Hyde.
Next. Is that it? All right, last call for public comment? Yes, sir, come on up, state your name, and you have 2 minutes, sir.
Mike Pelfrey. I listened to the attorney mention something about the time, place, and manner part of this whole whatever. You know, one of my big concerns is that I'm going to say that I'm supportive I'll just say in a guarded manner in regards to the grant program. But at the same time, we know that a lot of the folks that live here that are homeless aren't even going to attempt to go into that place. So I want to make sure that we are going to be able to address the fact that there are going to be a lot of folks out there that are not going to, they don't want help. We know that. We see them all over this city. And, you know, this city has literally been abused regularly by vagrants within our community that they don't care about anything that you and I say. They just want to make sure that they get whatever they get. We've got to be able to address that in any solution that we do. The other thing I would say, too, is if I find it interesting, and again, I go back to the attorney, that in Ashland, in Pam Marsh Country, they are able to regulate the homeless camp there that is run by the city, where they can tell them that they can set up their tent at 7 p.m. And then they have to have all of their belongings out at 7 a.m. So I want to make sure that if we do have, and I don't know if it's the injunction that's causing us not to be able to do this for now, but going forward, we need to make sure that we can do the same things that the Ashlands of the world can do. Because if Ashland can do it, surely Grants Pass can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to speak tonight? Yeah, please restate your name and go for it.
My name's Carol Bleck, and Grants Pass, and I just want to reiterate what one of the other speakers talked about, and that's the neighborhood in which and again, I want to say or repeat that with all respect to U-Turn for Christ. I walked the area this afternoon, went over there and walked the area of where the school is. The playground is on the very closest corner, which is about 300 feet from the very corner of that property, and then also drove into where the 55 plus community is at. It's a mobile home, as well as I think there's manufactured homes along there. They don't even have a fence that runs along that creek that's between the school and the housing area there, and then it abuts right up against the property that they're looking at on Vine Street. Very, very concerned about the vulnerability of that school. I know that a lot of people aren't even aware that that school is there because it's tucked into a cul-de-sac. And so a lot of people don't even know it's there, but it's there, and the creek produces a lot of overgrowth and a lot of area and easy places to sleep and hide and all the different things that we know that we've had to deal with over the years. But I just wanted to restate that fact that that property is really not a good spot. Thank you.
Thank you. And we got one more? Come on up, state your name, please.
My name's Kevin Gill. I'm a business owner in town. I want to thank you for taking the time to present this material. As part of the grant performance metrics, I'd like to see, I'm sure chiefs, fire and police chiefs are currently tracking their activities related to homeless. And part of the performance metrics for the grant should be if that time decreases for the police and fire chief, that would be a key performance because public safety is definitely important to the citizens of Grants Pass. The other thing I don't hear much said at local, state, or federal level is about prevention of homeless in the first place. Everybody's just trying to put a tourniquet on when the problem already exists, but the problem starts when kids are very little and their mom is addicted or dad takes off. There's a lot of flaky dads, right? So how do we provide money and grant funding to prevent the problem in the first place? It's going to take a long time, but maybe somebody sitting in your seat in 20 or 30 years will have a lot better situation to deal with than you guys do right now. So I would like to see money carved out of the budget for prevention. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak tonight?
Yeah, my name is Rick Flora. I too want to thank you for holding this session so we can talk to each other. I think anything that the council does to help the homeless situation in this community would be commendable. The one question I have is, I don't understand why some people think it's necessary to have people pull up stakes and haul their stuff around all day long and come back and reset up every night. These are people that are already suffering. And whether it's every day or every 3 days, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And so I hope you think about that when you're considering how we're going to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? All right. Well, I thank you all for participating tonight. Hopefully you guys learned a few things, and hopefully we were able to answer a few questions as well. I do want to touch on a couple things from public comment. Somebody got up and was very passionate and talked about facts. Well, these are the facts that we need to actually address. It's stated in the lawsuit that council's actions to shut down a large resting area that was nothing but problems to the community as well as the police force, and then decreasing hours to evening times was not objectively reasonable. So we have examples of people say, well, what does Ashland do? What does Medford do? What does Hillsborough do? What does Brookings do? What is it? Currently, we are underneath a lawsuit. This is the second one in regards to this topic. It's brought forth by basically the same law center, and it is revolving around HB 3115. Yes, the law says that you can enforce rules and regulations, but underneath our current injunction and lawsuit, we cannot do what any other city in this state can do. So those are some of the facts that are out there. I promoted, and a lot of councilors up here promoted, the community to reach out to your legislators. My wife wrote a letter to Pam Marsh, and she got a response. Her response was that she wanted to defend HB 3115 and tell us as a community that we need to suck it up. That's basically the gist of her letter back to my wife. She was one of the proponents of not allowing the bill HB 2432 to go to the floor. We just heard from our state representative, Dwayne Yunker, that bill did not pass again. And for her letter back to my wife, a concerned citizen, to basically tell the city of Grants Pass to suck it up, because if we were to be allowed underneath the new bill 2432 to regulate the safety within our streets, that we would push the problem onto other cities. This letter is devoid and disconnected from our community 100%. So I encourage you guys as a community to reach out to your legislators, because there is a problem. There is a huge disconnect from the state legislation down to small communities like ourselves. We, as a governing body here, are trying to do the best that we possibly can, and I appreciate the accolades that you guys recognize that we are doing some hard work here. Some of the decisions that we make are not something that any one of you guys would like to make. So I stand behind every single council member up here. Even though I don't have a vote in this, I support these guys 100%, and they are doing the hard work. So hopefully we were transparent to you tonight and the rest of the community. And the last thing I want to say is, just because you see it on the internet and you read it on the internet, it might not be true. Reach out to us. We all have email addresses. We all have phone numbers. We all come to here. You guys can come and speak your voice every Wednesday or every other Wednesday night when we have the meetings. And we get your emails and we address them and we try to respond as best we can. But the main people that I hear dissent from on social media don't even bother to show up. So that's something to be thought about. With that, I'm going to open it up to the council if you guys had any parting words. Indra? I'm just going to go down the line.
Thank you. I do always have parting words usually. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate your input. And I come with an open mind. I thought the presentation was very well done. So thank you, Aaron and Stephanie, for that. And I thought there was a lot of good information, and information maybe that wasn't out there before that you were able to get today. I will say that I represent Ward 1, so A Street impacts me as well as a lot of people I know, and it is in my, I'm a big advocate for getting rid of that site as soon as possible. And like many of you are, I'm looking at the grant program and the timeline and saying, oh my gosh, this is a long time. And so I'm not opposed to the grant, and I think we should do the grant and help people, and I like the layout of that. However, I also heard the negative route, and I'm not opposed to looking more at what that might be in the meantime while we maybe get the grant. So maybe that's something to look at. I do agree with the person that talked about Mint in January. It does seem like we're back to where we were. Julie Thomas, in fact, was a big advocate of Mint back in January and getting the money. And so it does seem like some time is wasted and perhaps mistakes were made, and I just want to acknowledge that. But going forward, I think we need to be very careful that it's a permanent fix going forward, that we're not rushing into anything, and what we decide on, we want to work well for everybody. And then lastly, prevention, absolutely. I know a lot of our foster children end up homeless on the street, and that's a tragedy. We do need to reach out to our children, and I would like to see, I've spoke to that before, I would like to see more dollars spent or a program or something we can do to reach our youth so that they don't end up on the streets as well, because otherwise we're not stopping the problem. So I agree with that. Thanks again for coming.
Rick, did you have anything to add?
Sure. Thank you all for coming tonight. I look forward to the opportunity with the grant to include the applicants being able to address the different methods in which they want to operate the site. I've viewed sites in Bend, Eugene, and Medford, and a lot of those sites have been successful. And legally, I don't know if their operation can be included in our grant, but I'm hoping the applicants will look at that as well. Thank you.
Joel, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to repeat back what I heard, and if I missed something, see me after the meeting. some of the public questions I had was the size of the facility. There were some concerns about having an industrial complex for the unsheltered, and that with a fairly big size. There was a question about drug treatment, and will the facility provide drug treatment or referrals to it? There was one comment about busing. Actually, San Francisco does some busing, and it's very humane. They offer to bus them back to their home. And a certain part of the population that solves their problem. Location was a concern, and several people mentioned specific locations. We had a couple organizations come that one indicated they were going to put in for it, the other one didn't. Appreciate both of you being here, and both of you contribute along with the other nonprofits that are in our community. There was a question yet unanswered, what to do with others that don't want to go to such a place as a managed site. And so we'll need to deal with that, obviously. And then there was some prevention. There was a question about prevention services and what Ashland does. I was just writing down some things like family court and foster kids and different public services that are already available as I was listening to you. And then why do people have to move? I heard that question. So we need to address those and make sure we understand and go forth with full knowledge and awareness. And if there's something I missed that you wanted me to hear, you better tell me because I won't remember it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Eric, do you want to add anything?
Yes. Okay, so obviously HB 3115 is an unfunded mandate. We're all forced to do that, okay? The taxpayers are paying for it. And it was brought to the floor today, just like the mayor was saying, and the legislatures up in Salem decided to vote against repealing it. So here we are, HB 3115. I heard J Street was a mistake for us to shut down. It was way out of control. That was a homeless industrial complex. It was costing the money, it was costing the city a lot of money, the taxpayers. It was a massive crime haven. The businesses around it were suffering. It had to be shut down. The next thing I want to point out is that the lawsuit that is being brought on us originated prior to that happening. And then I heard mistakes were being made. I'm not sure about that in terms of Mint shutting down or not providing the funds for the Mint building. That was a liability as well. That was $700,000 that the city would have been liable for if something were to happen in those buildings, which are highly dilapidated down there, which I'm glad they're being fixed up right now, but that was something that the city would have been held liable for if somebody would have gotten injured. So mistakes, I'm not sure about that. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I also want to say thank you for coming. Thank you for your input. We want to facilitate regulating to provide safety for the nonprofit who steps up and the city. So I want to address a couple of things that were said here. Maybe I'll just start with the negatives of J Street. J Street was not ADA compliant, and so we were not going to be successful with that site. I mean, the ADA compliance thing that came on us after we closed that down, it just would have never fit. We would have had to do so much to that property to make it ADA compliant. That's why we've chosen some of the sites we have, because they were paved, because they were shaded, because they gave the homeless some reprieve in areas we hadn't thought about before. I want to say that you heard earlier that if you start a service, you have to maintain it. Well, the former council started these services, so we had to keep providing something as the new council. I just want to remind people about that. It's a minimal requirement for 150 spaces. That doesn't mean the new nonprofit's going to have to provide 500 to 600. We don't know what that's going to look like. That's going to be up to them. So I just want to remind you the minimal is 150 spaces that the courts are requiring. And it will be up to the nonprofit to work with the neighborhoods to shore up any areas that are susceptible for the schools or the neighborhoods. But there are things that they will have to comply with as far as fire, police, regulations of the city. So that will be addressed. The bottom line is that we're trying to do something different as quickly as possible. So with that, I just want to say we're doing our best as quickly as we can, and we hope that we can alleviate some of your concerns. They are our concerns as well. So it's just, of course, taking longer than anybody ever imagined. But we all need to have patience. Oh, I guess I just, at the end, want to remind you some of the key benefits of a grants-based approach, that it will remove the city from liability by not selecting a property. It will open up the process to competition. It will streamline our role as the city, and it will align property acquisition with operational needs. So we are considering a myriad of things that have not been considered in the past, and why we made our decisions in the past the way we did. We are learning from past mistakes. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's a little lighter than I expected, I will have to say that. So I hope everyone out there that either listening or was curious about this information found it informative. I'll echo what Clint said regarding the state of Oregon. I think, you know, our legislature has put a lot of burden on the city of Grants Pass. There's people out there that think that this isn't the case, but it really is. I've met with other counselors and representatives from other cities, and we truly are under attack in some sense, for sure, and not even just in Oregon, but across the nation. So that's definitely a fact. I'm in support of the grant. I think that, you know, it keeps it fair. It allows everyone to apply. I think it takes the city out of it as much as possible, at least. And, yeah, you know, I think every decision that has been made prior to even me being on council and even now, none of us take lightly. It's you know, it's a tough position in that sense. You know, we have to deal with this kind of stuff every day. And you know, we're all trying to make the best decision, and we're trying to take in consideration what everyone has to say. And, you know, I think ultimately there's no perfect solution. There's always going to be pushback. And, you know, I think no matter where this ends up, you know, it'll be not in my backyard, but hopefully whoever takes on this endeavor finds a location and a solution that helps Grants Pass long term. I'm highly invested in this community. I've lived here my entire life, so, you know, ultimately I only want what's best for Grants Pass.
Thank you. Rob?
Yeah, a lot of good questions tonight. And I know that, frankly, there's questions that came up that many on council haven't really thought that much through, haven't really thought through and need to know more about. One thing that I'll just bring up, you know, someone asked about location, And, the quick answer to that, that the attorney or the manager might say, or maybe someone on council would say, well, it's just a matter of zoning laws. I'm quite sure that there are many on council right now that have not seen the map of exactly all the places, all the locations that our zoning laws would currently allow this kind of facility. I mean, back a couple of years ago, we saw that the old Elks Club building actually was met certain requirements, met the zoning requirements, and yet virtually everyone in town knew that that was not a good location for many reasons. I mean, it was really close to downtown, really close to 6th Street, et cetera. So if we actually, there's going to be a point at which that council, before we actually decide on the parameters of this grant, council is going to need to look at, so that everyone on council actually fully understands, they need to look at the zoning maps and actually see what that means. See where, if council had no input on location and it only went by zoning only, where the possible locations would be. And to me, that's a really a very concerning thought, because I've looked at the maps and I know what that actually means. And there's some places within those zoning areas that I feel would actually be pretty appropriate, far away from residential, far away from our downtown, et cetera. There's other places that actually would qualify that council may not want to actually put this kind of facility in. So council needs to actually get educated there. As far as one of the first questions tonight was a size guarantee, initially when people first talked about the Vine Street property, the promoters of that property were talking about great spot for 600 people. Then it became a great spot for 500 people. Then as another month went by, they said it was a great spot for 250 people. Well, I am very concerned with having a spot that could grow into 250 or 400 or 500 people and basically fully support the homeless industrial complex, and council's grant would then be underwriting the homeless industrial complex, forming a kind of, if you build it, they will come homeless facility. And I personally, and again, I'm still very much in a listening and learning mode, but it is very, very unlikely that I would ever vote yes on a grant that would potentially allow that, our taxpayer dollars to support what I consider to be a very large place that could grow into, again, and if you build it, they will come location. So that really, in my opinion, that is a discussion that council needs to have, because it's a big concern for myself. I don't know if it's a concern for any other councilor, but it's a concern for me. And, for all I know, the council could vote 7-1, and I'd be on the losing end of a 500 person spot, but that's not something that I would ever support. As far as location goes, getting back to that, I totally understand people's concerns about near a school or near residential or whatever, but I know that several on council, Rick for sure, and myself, and Seth and Indra, I know that, and I believe Joel also, we've actually visited well-managed sites. And for instance, the crossings over in Medford, the former mayor, the former police chief, current Jackson County Commissioner, Randy Sparacino, had almost nothing but positive to say about Rogue Retreat. And the surrounding neighborhoods there have not been negatively impacted. Now, they still have homeless on their streets over there, and that was another question that somebody brought up, is what happens to the people that don't want to go on a site like this? How are we going to deal with them? But I know that I've also visited a UCAN facility up in Roseburg that is right in a residential neighborhood. I've spoken to city councilors in Roseburg. I've spoken to the neighbors of the Roseburg site, and they have virtually no problems in that neighborhood due to a well-managed homeless facility. But that's the key there, is well-managed, who's going to do it, what their rules are. And again, the same thing over in Medford. The neighbors are not, if anything, matter of fact, at one point, the position of the police department over in Medford was the surrounding neighborhoods were actually doing better as far as crime goes than many of the other neighborhoods in town. So well-managed is the key there, wherever it goes. Right now, the kinds of sites that we have at 6th and A, we know that most people do not want to live anywhere near them because there's a lot of trouble. Well-managed, though, is the key, and I know that there's several councilors have visited well-managed sites and have seen the same things that I've seen. As far as, well, there's really no point in going back and correcting some erroneous statements that were made by certain councilors, but because we're hopefully moving forward. Yeah, anyway, that's what I have to say. As far as locations, it's clear to me, I've seen well-managed sites. I know that they can be done well with minimal impact to surrounding neighborhoods. And as far as any kind of size guarantee or maximum, it would be, from what I know today, and I'm willing to learn and listen, it'd be almost impossible for me to vote yes on any grant that would go to a place that could turn out to be a 300 or 400 or 500 person site, because I don't think that's what the citizens want in Grants Pass. I don't think that any of us want to have a site that large that could just continue to attract more. Even if they can pay for themselves with grants and so forth, is that really the way we want to grow our, grow our business base here? The way I look at it, it's not. But that's, for tonight, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Victoria?
I'd like to also thank everyone for coming and voicing your concerns and also your support. I want to reiterate that we are here because of 3115. We were, our town chose to fight the last lawsuit, went all the way to the Supreme Court and won. The state legislature, Tina Kotek was the Speaker of the House at that time. In 2021, spearheaded 3115. And there is a recording out there that you can find on YouTube of some lawyers and also legislators talking about 3115. And they were anticipating that they would lose, they meaning the state. They thought they were going to lose the Supreme Court case. I did too, as a citizen. It just seemed obvious to me. And so they passed 3115 in 2021. That was before we won our Supreme Court case. They wrote that law to circumvent our win at the Supreme Court. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that and keep pushing back on it. Dwayne Yunker got one more vote today. They are 2 votes shy of getting rid of 3115. It won't die, well, it may this particular legislative session, but it won't die in the next one, and it will be up to citizens to make sure that you make your voice heard. It is not up to a court, in my opinion, to get to decide what objectively reasonable is. I think that our legislature can write a better law and not rely on courts to define what the law they wrote was. And if they're relying on the courts to define the laws that they write, then they aren't very good legislators. As far as council here being informed, I think that we are. We've been really focusing in on this. And as citizens, before we were elected, we were as well. I would like to point out, with all due respect to Rob Pell, J Street was getting up to 300 people. It was a dangerous site, and I stand behind shutting it down. It was an extremely dangerous site. And we have visited, I know I have visited, other sites around the area many times over the years, not just when I have been a counselor. And so I feel informed. I don't feel uninformed. I think that I can very easily look at a map and figure out, with the help of our wonderful staff, how things are zoned easily. But I did having said that, I wrote down your concerns about the possible site that everybody is talking about. I did. I think it's going to be really important to make sure that any site, if we know which site is going to be chosen, that it's going to be the safest possible. And the beauty of this grant is that we don't choose the site. And bear with me a moment. The City Council will not choose where the site is, how the site is managed, and what that does for our city is it provides a barrier against future lawsuits, because we have done our due diligence to provide the space wherein these people will be housed, but we are not making the decisions about how they are going to be housed. We will want people to report to us about how they are doing, and there are those, as Stephanie pointed out, there are safeguards for the city as well. So the beauty of this particular grant style is that it really does protect the city. And but I did write down absolutely everyone who spoke. I wrote down the main points of what your concerns were. And when we have our workshop on that again, I know that I will bring them up and see what can be done about all of those to make sure that all your fears are alleviated as much as possible. So we, in a very short amount of time, it's only been, it's been less than 6 months since we have been here, and we have worked very hard to come up with a solution that is going to be the fastest and the safest, and to create the best future for Grants Pass. I think that the grant is a great idea, and I think that we do need to explore it. And I think it was written well, and I think we have a bright future looking ahead, but also taking into your consideration to your concerns. And so I just wanted to thank you again for coming, and please, 3115 was a law that was written to make things difficult on you, and it's a law that you should continue to speak out against. So thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you to all the counselors. Thank you to you guys. We're going to end on that note. And if you have any further questions, there are cards in the back with everybody's email on them, and you can communicate that way in the future if you so desire. If not, thank you very much, and you guys have a great evening.